Howdy, Geordie Prepper here. Welcome to another news video. We're just going to look at news articles and give my opinion on how they relate and how they relate to our prepping. And the first one that we're going to look at here is talking about a strong M-class flare that happened the other day. It was causing radio blackouts over Australia and Southeast Asia. So when we're looking at nature, nature has the way to affect us in many ways, especially the sun. You know, the sun powers the climate. It's the only thing that affects the climate is the star, because it's powering the environment and it's powering the climate. It's just a reminder when you're thinking about your preps, the solar flares can affect your communications if you rely heavily on radio communications. There is external forces that you simply don't have any control over. M-class flares are considered moderate in intensity. This one was affecting radio communications for about an hour after its peak. So obviously something to think about if it is a very strong flare. We were talking about how Israel's going to the last stronghold or holdout of the people in Gaza. It's where the highest concentrations of the people are now. And it looks like Israel started bombing Rafah. This is obviously a prelude to a ground offensive. And we were talking about that ground offensive was going to start soon, and it looks like it's basically just around the corner now. And a lot of countries are thinking about conscription, thinking about bringing people into the military because of the threats of conflict. This article is also talking about Israel's military. On Wednesday, proposed increasing the country's mandatory enlistment and reserve service commitments. If they're talking about this sort of thing, then you're going to get signed up to duty. Get ready for that however best you feel. I mean, to be honest, you want to be concentrating on your number one prep, which is your fitness, because you don't want to be the slow guy when you're running from fire. US is going to launch more strikes on Houthis. This is basically kind of emboldening the Houthis. Every attack that they suffer, they just come out with more statements about how they're going to increase their attacks, and that they actually do increase their attacks. They weren't targeting US and other allied ships at first. They were targeting commercial vessels tied to Israel. The United States and other countries started attacking the Houthis, and then the Houthis started attacking United States and other countries' military assets. Obviously, this attack on the base in Jordan has changed the dynamic quite a lot, escalated the US response in the Middle East, and this is just more things which is going to make some very shaky ground even more unstable. Russian Defense Ministry has posted a report here on the special military operation in Ukraine. It goes into quite a bit of detail about what's been destroyed and what's been intercepted. We'll just go down to the base of the article here, because what's most interesting is just how many unmanned aerial vehicles and tanks and other combat vehicles have been lost. 4 HIMARS multiple launch rocket system projectiles were intercepted. 104 unmanned aerial vehicles have been hit. The summary at the end here: 569 airplanes, 265 helicopters, nearly 12,000 unmanned aerial vehicles destroyed, 462 air defense missile systems, and nearly 15,000 tanks and other armoured combat vehicles. That's absolutely incredible. But it seems that Russia is able to keep up with these and sustain these losses, because they're still at it. So looking at the Middle East, the drone attack that killed the US troops in Jordan on the 20th of January has definitely escalated things in the region. It's changed the whole dynamic. It's focused in the response on Iran. So the US and other countries are focusing on the proxy groups. Effectively, what they're saying is, and what they're doing is attacking Iran itself. If those proxy groups are in fact linked to Iran, then it's the United States telling Iran, you know, that basically, you know, we're here and we can hit you if we want to. So Medvedev, he's previous president of Russia, and he's issued quite a few threats over the last couple of years, especially since the start of the offensive in Ukraine. And he's basically threatening the whole entire world now with an apocalypse. And he's threatened like United Kingdom and other countries and said, look, if you attack us, basically we're going to nuke you. He hasn't really glossed over the fact. All these countries, you know, Norway, Finland, Poland, Britain, saying, oh, we've got to be prepared for a war with Russia. Basically what we're looking at here, and what this article is confirming, is that if we were to go to war with Russia, it wouldn't be like it is in the Ukraine. It just would be a completely different dynamic. It would be a completely different war. Medvedev's saying here that the incomparability of our military capabilities would give them no choice but to respond in a ballistic and special warheads would be used. So he's talking about nuclear weapons. So essentially, you know, NATO, if it does take action against Russia, as soon as we see that as preppers, if we see any talk about NATO itself invoking Article 4, potentially invoking Article 5, if Medvedev's right, and if Medvedev's still close to, you know, the military tacticians in Russia, and if they've said to him, look, if NATO goes to war with us, we've got no choice but to use the nuclear option. Of course, there's other ways that it could go to the nuclear option as well, but specifically if we see NATO saying, look, we're invoking Article 4 and Article 5, then, you know, you really want to look out for the signals of when to act. So with the US and other countries escalating their response on Iran's proxies, Iran itself is being a lot more vocal about the actions that are being taken against these groups, which are said to be supported by them. There's a quote here. Last night's attack on Syria and Iraq is an adventurous action and another strategic mistake by the US government, which will have no result other than intensifying tension and instability in the region. And that was Iran's Foreign Minister Nasser Kanani. We don't obviously see the whole picture. We can only look at what we can see and what's put out there and just make our own decisions and assessment of it. And when we're looking at this, everybody who's a prepper, you know, we're poring over the news right now. We're watching people who put the news out, you know, full spectrum survival. Brad and Kelly are doing their thing every single day, putting news out there so that we can take actionable and very good decisions on what we do as preppers and how we prep. So we've got to look at everything and boil it down and relate it to ourselves and who we're responsible for. And then we use that to prep as best we can for the consequences, because we haven't seen all the consequences from all this stuff in the Middle East and everywhere else. And just continuing on with instability, this article from the New York Post is saying that Lebanon and Hezbollah is basically ready to go to war with Israel. The situation with Hezbollah is being kind of glossed over, I think. I don't think people realize just how serious that would be. You know, they've exchanged fire with each other over the years. They're exchanging fire with each other right now. They've both got assets and military built up along each other's borders. You know, Hezbollah is not a force to be underestimated. Done some serious damage to Israel in the past. Israel's done some serious damage to them, so it would be a very rough and brutal conflict. It would be really unfortunate if they did go to war and start conflict, but I think with everything that's happening in the Middle East, you know, this is just one thing, which is pretty much a CERN at this point. You know, guys, just prep hard. Have some fun as well, obviously, as well. You know, it's not all doom and gloom and it's not all prepping all the time. You've got to make time for yourself and others and basically have some fun. You'll be in a better state of mind to weather, what's coming. But you'll have your preps there to support you. That's the end of today's Prepper News. Thanks very much for watching. Be safe, be prepared, and I'll see you in the next broadcast. This has been Geordie Prepper, signing out.